is there still benefit?
And this year's impact on GDP will be, I would say, too small to estimate.
Japan's economy will recover to the level before the pandemic. So do you agree with this prediction?
It may take possibly another at least half year or even a year.
Is there any long-term impact from the pandemic to Japan's economy?
People tend to save more money, not spend more money, or less money, spend less money. So that would be our biggest concern right now.
现在正值东京奥运，那么今天呢，我要请到一位日本的经济学家在线上和我一起来讨论东京奥运和日本经济。他是瑞信日本首席经济学家白川浩道先生。Mr. Shirakawa, thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
The Tokyo Olympics are finally being held, although there are twists and turns. According to Tokyo Metropolitan Government in 2013, the Olympics would bring about 2.96 trillion yen to Japan's economy from 2013 to 2020 in economic benefit. Some people even say that the Olympics would become the fourth arrow after 3 arrows of Abenomics that promotes Japan's economic growth. But we know that things change a lot. So how do you think that the Olympic affect Japan's economy? Is there still benefit?
Okay, first of all, I think that Olympic Games are still beneficial to the economy. But as you mentioned, things have changed a lot. And in particular, in terms of the impact on the economy from holding Olympic Games, we have to think that indirect impact on the economy seems much smaller than we had expected. In terms of the direct impact on the economy, we think that it was probably more than even 5 trillion yen hosting Olympic Games. In particular, toward the originally planned year of Olympic Games, which is 2020, in 2018 and 19, we had seen a big boost of construction investment, in particular in Tokyo area and some other big cities. If you come to Tokyo, you see many new hotel buildings, new restaurants, but all of those hotel buildings and new restaurants now seem fairly vacant. So current direct impact on the economy is much smaller, and indirect impact seems to be smaller, mainly because Japanese government wanted to take opportunity of hosting Olympic Games to invite more foreign companies to open up businesses in Japan. That's the indirect impact, which is not happening right now. So we are a bit disappointed. And this year's impact on GDP will be, I would say, too small to estimate. So maybe less than several hundred billion yen. So it is fairly negligible.
Although the economic benefit is smaller than expected, but many people still believe that Japan's economy is quite optimistic this year. I have numbers from Japan Center for Economic Research. The center predicts that Japan's actual GDP growth will increase to 4.9% in the current quarter, and will it still maintain a very high growth rate to 4.58% in the fourth quarter. And at the end of this year, Japan's economy will recover to the level before the pandemic. So do you agree with this prediction?
The short answer is no. Our team is more cautious about outlook. The different thing from our assumption before the middle of the year is the current increase of COVID-19 cases, in particular, which has been driven by so-called Delta variant. for the current quarter, July-September quarter, we don't expect like 5% GDP growth. It might be even very close to 0%. And for the October-December quarter, it depends on how people become confident of the status of the situation of the COVID. But if the vaccination is lagging and if the people's confidence does not recover, October-December quarter's number would also be lower than than that you have mentioned. So we do not think Japanese economy going back to the pre-pandemic level at the end of this year. It may take possibly another at least half year or even a year.
Other than the number of GDP growth, is there any long-term impact from the pandemic to Japan's economy?
Yes, I think if you know Japanese, Japanese people are very cautious. And if you take a look at Japanese households, savings, for example, household savings remain on rising trend. And our concern relates to possibility that Japanese would continue to save money after or in preparation for another shock into the future. So even if the COVID is well contained, as a long-term impact on consumption, people tend to save more money, not spend more money, or less money, spend less money. So that would be our biggest concern right now.
A data that's strongly associated with the consumption is a CPI. We know that many people, when they name the issue of Japan's economy, they may say that deflation. But we can see that things change a little bit recently because Japan's core CPI in May rose to 0.1% year on year. It is a positive number. So do you think that it is the beginning of Japan's inflation?
Well, I think what we can say is that deflation seems over. But it depends on how you define inflation. But inflation doesn't seem to be coming so soon, mainly because of the remaining weak consumption. And it may take more time for Japan to see significantly positive number like 2% inflation rate. And aging population doesn't matter because the aged people tend to spend less. And also, as I pointed out, COVID-19 shock may increase household savings. But in the meantime, you know that if the country becomes more aged people, the share of aged people increases, we will see shortage of labor, shortage of workers, and like what United States is now suffering, shortage of workers and the possible decline of supply of the economy, that may help prices from not going down.
So what do you think is an effective measurement to solve this consumption issue?
Well, that is a very good question. One thing we have to mention is that the Japanese fiscal situation is not so good. And because of the COVID-19 pandemic, government spent a lot of money last year and even spending money this year, and a huge fiscal deficit, which has led to a further accumulation of the public debt. It is not easy for the government to, for example, cut taxes. And as you know, the Japanese government raised VAT, value-added tax, twice between 2014 and 19. And currently, VAT tax rate is 10%, 10%. But that 10% VAT rate cannot be sustained if the government wants to resolve this debt issue. So it is not easy for the government to boost consumption by lowering tax rate. So consumption story is only sort of kind of hoping people to spend money even without tax cuts. And what is that? It is not an easy question to answer.
Yes. So I know you previously worked at the Central Bank of Japan, BOJ. So given that the situation of consumption is still not ideal, so do you think that there will be any change of direction of the monetary policy?
Yes, I think I used to work for the central bank, and I'm still watching monetary policy of Japan. Well, the monetary policy of Japan has been, in one sense, very innovative, because Bank of Japan introduced so-called zero interest policy even back in 1999. So Japan has a long history of zero interest policy and quantitative easing, for example, and they have done a lot, but they have failed in boosting consumption. So the question to be asked is whether or not monetary easing does help people to spend money. And we don't think that's really the case, because the monetary policy cannot easily be boosting inflation expectation, because people do not trust money printing is really boosting the economy. So one problem we have is the sort of distrust by people about the effectiveness of monetary policy. So having said that, BOJ cannot easily tighten monetary policy for sure. So it is up to the US monetary policy, but in terms of direction of monetary policy, we think that BOJ will keep the current accommodative monetary policy for a long time, even up to 2024 or 2025.
Do you have any any long-term thinking that to help Japan to solve this problem?
So we need always a third policy, which is some industrial policy, deregulation sort of things. And for that, the Japan may need to open up the economy for more business to come from outside the country, more less capital control, more investment from outside the country. But how to make country more attractive for outside countries is a big issue still, because we have several difficulties on IT infrastructure, risk of the earthquakes, and so forth. So it's a long-term issue and not easy to to get to a powerful and robust answer.